Hello, my name is Cody and today I will be teaching you how to solder. Soldering is basically the art of using a soldering iron, like this one, at a very high temperature to melt solder, this silver thing, to solder metal to metal. Soldering is most commonly used on an LED board, like this one here. So how it's used is, you put a component like this PCB into the board and using the high temperature of the soldering iron, you melt the solder onto the component which attaches it to the board. So for this tutorial you will need a spare LED board, like this, a small component to solder onto the board, a soldering iron, and some solder. So first, turn your soldering iron on, and be aware that soldering irons are very hot, so don't touch them. And usually you put the soldering iron to 650. So after it's put at 650, it'll show you the real temperature. So you also need a sponge to wipe your soldering iron on, like this. It's not really on yet. Like that. Okay. So once you have your solder, get the top side of your LED board, which is usually the side with all the markings, and put your component through a hole that fits it, like here, and then push it in all the way down, and then flip the board around so that the component is facing down. Basically, what you do is you take the soldering iron here, you put it on top of the component that's about to be soldered. So like here, there's a wire. So you put the tip of your soldering iron just above that, and make sure your solder is straight, and then slowly push your solder lightly against the soldering tip, and eventually it'll start to melt. So sometimes if it doesn't melt, then you can just turn your soldering iron up to about somewhere around 700, and then put it on top again. This time the solder should melt. See there? And just feed a bit of solder into the tip until it flows, which basically means that the solder sinks into the component and forms a dome shape right there. Right there, see that? It's like a dome shape. And do the same. Put your soldering iron just above the component and slowly feed the solder into it. There, see? It just sucked all of it in. So, just a couple of general things about soldering. After you solder a component, remember to wipe it on your sponge so there isn't leftover solder on your tip. And also, always hold your soldering iron on the component at all times. It may take a while, but make sure that you never use your soldering iron and go like tap, tap, tap like this. That will result in a bad soldered component, and it won't look good either. So Last step of soldering is make sure you have safety glasses. So put them on. And you'll need some tweezers, like cutters, like these. Because this is a bit sticking out, right? So what we want to do is put the cutters just above the dome of solder. And it's best to have it in a bin, like this one. So when you cut it off, it won't go flying everywhere. So you just put it here and cut. See, that one sprung here, so it's important to have safety glasses to make sure it doesn't spring into your eyes. And the other one, there, just fell into the bin. See, so here's the final result of soldering. It should be a dome shape with a little nub at the end where the bottom of the component was. And a good soldering shape is always a dome, never a lump or. And your component should be fully soldered all the way around, not just halfway. So in order to ensure that your component isn't halfway soldered, you have to make sure that your soldering iron's on the top of the component so the solder naturally flows down all around the component. Okay, so just to review, you get a spare component, find a suitable spot on the top of your LED board, push it down hard, and if your component begins to slip out, then you can slightly bend the wires of the component out so it stays firmly in place, and then put your board down so that it's slanted toward you, never away from you, as that will make it easier to solder. So make sure you straighten out your solder and make sure you have plenty of solder to feed. So once again, you have to put your soldering iron on top and just feed the solder into the iron. And there, you just let it flow. There, see? And you have to wipe your soldering iron. And then, once again, on the top, feed so that it just flows right around. You might have to wait a bit. There, see? Flowed right around. And as always, you have to wipe your soldering iron and put it in there. And just never touch the soldering iron or you might get a very serious burn, as it's 700 degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit or Celsius. And yeah, so here's the solder component, and as always, just snip the pieces off like that. And there. See, if you snip your pieces too low, you might cut the solder, and that may result in the component flying like way out of control, and it might hit someone in the eye. So make sure to just cut the wire, never the solder. And a couple of side notes. It's a good thing to remember to never touch the silver part, as the oil from your fingers will make the solder not stick, and it maybe make soldering harder for you. So yeah, thanks for watching this tutorial on soldering, and please like and subscribe. And yeah.